North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news. Honestly, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That is not news. Just my opinion, just as valuable as yours, and so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. The overarching hope is that at the end of this broadcast, we have a lot more truth than what we started with. Welcome to the broadcast. I'm trying to figure out the conundrum that has been the case for these many days. And just exactly what is that? Well, I am trying to find out what is going on with YouTube. YouTube suspended me. I guess it's now, let's see, it was 10 days. It was 10 days on Friday, so Saturday's 13 days. I've been suspended for 13 days by YouTube, and I don't know why. I'm attempting to go live as we speak. Due to community guideline strikes or copyright issues, you cannot live stream at this time. So this was supposed to be a 7-day suspense, and it is now 13 days. So it's been almost 2 weeks. So what's the story? Let me, the only other thing, ding, whatever that is, let me see what I can do about finding my Gmail and see if they have changed something. Let's see, a new sign-in, that's not it. Job alert, no, that's not it. Let's see, what else? YouTube community. Let's see, reviewed your content. We think it violates our medical misinformation policy. That would have been 4 days ago. I don't know what they're talking about. How your content violated our policy. Yeah. Your channel has one strike. Yeah. You won't be able to do things like upload, post, or live stream for 1 week. A second strike will prevent you from publishing content for 2 weeks. 3 strikes in the same 90-day period, so on and so on. YouTube team. That is according to YouTube, etc., and it's a no reply, so I can't reply to it. So all I can tell you is that they suspended me for a week, and now it's almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks tomorrow, in fact. So I don't know exactly what to do with that, except tell you that we are still here. We're on Facebook and YouTube. Actually, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And we are broadcasting live as we come to you. And we are so glad that you are here. Let's get to the news. By the way, this broadcast was recorded earlier in the day for those people watching on Patreon and watching on Rumble. This was broadcast earlier today. We are live on Facebook and apparently Twitter and Twitch, but not YouTube for a while. Don't know how long that's going to last. But we are broadcasting live in the Central Time Zone from 2 until 5 p.m. Okay? So there you go. That's everything. What I wanted to do is bring people up to date because people care, and I want them to know that I'm doing everything I can to get to where we need to get with YouTube one more time. Don't have any idea why they're doing this. So maybe someday we'll find out. We have been watching this saga of this Chinese spy balloon traversing the United States of America now for about a week and a half. As you know, an Air Force jet shot down the suspected Chinese spy balloon off the South Carolina coast near Myrtle Beach. Yeah, Surfside Beach, Myrtle Beach, two of my favorite places. It drifted for 5 days across Idaho, Montana, and the continental U.S. before reaching the Atlantic. An F-22 Raptor fired a single missile that sent the balloon into the ocean at about 2:39 p.m. Efforts to recover its surveillance equipment are underway. So a lot of people are saying that they fired a Sidewinder missile at it. No. I don't believe they fired a Sidewinder missile at it. I believe what they did was fire a Sparrow missile at it. A Sparrow missile is radar guided. A Sidewinder missile is a thermal guided missile. In other words, it looks for a heat signature coming from the target. And if there was enough heat to get the attention of a Sidewinder missile, well, that might answer a couple of questions that I'm going to get to here in just a little bit. So the Pentagon had been tracking the balloon, which appeared over Billings, Montana, Wednesday after passing near an American missile launch site. China's foreign ministry said the balloon was a civilian weather balloon that was blown off course by westerly winds and entered the U.S. by accident. Yeah. Okay, I'm not exactly sure that that's real, but I guess, show you this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this right here. That is the track. You'll notice it starts here in China. Well, actually, maybe I should do this. Yeah, you can see my little mouse right here. It started in China, right? And then sort of went around the Arctic Circle and then across the Aleutian Islands and North Alaska and then down across the continental U.S. And then it went off shore at about Myrtle Beach. And what was fascinating to me is and this is going to get back into some of the things that I've made, some observations I've made. It was essentially shot down over the ocean in restricted airspace. There are a lot of weird things going on here. So anyway, U.S. defense officials said late last Thursday they had very high confidence the large white balloon belonged to China, that its purpose was surveillance. The current flight path does carry it over a number of sensitive sites. It apparently had some way of navigating on its own. One of the sites was Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana, where the Air Force maintains 150 intercontinental ballistic missile silos. Officials, however, said it's highly unlikely the high altitude balloon could gather more information than a spy satellite could. That is abundantly true. Okay, that is abundantly true. But I do want to show you something here. Okay. Let's see here. Google Earth Pro. Why am I doing that? I have that in here. Just a second. Stand by. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something that you probably really didn't think about. You know, I happen to think that missile silos are kind of cool, and so I've looked them over for years and years and years and years. I've even talked about maybe purchasing one, just to have it with me. But apparently, that's not something that is that easy to do. It takes a lot of money. Let's see. So let me get this to you. I want you to see this because this is not something that is really that difficult to do, right? It's really not that tough. Let's see, Google Earth Pro. Let's see, Google Earth on web. Let's try that one. Let's just do that one here. Launch Earth. Okay, and I got this all over the place here, but for some reason it's I may have to wait until after the break. Yeah, let me wait until after the break. Hang on a second. Minuteman, MAL. Let's see now. MINUTE man silos. SILOS. Minuteman silos. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring you to Minuteman silos, and I'm going to show you, let's see, Minuteman silos, D11 launch facilities. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, this will do. This will work. All right. So what I've just done here is I have gotten to, I believe, hang on just a minute here. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, that's not it. Let me try one of these. I'm trying to show you what this is. No, that's a historic landmark. We're not going to do that. Let's see. That's a launch facility. That's a historic landmark. Nope. Okay, let me see if this is. Yeah, these are basically empty fields here. I'll find this during the break, and what I'll do is I'll show them to you, and I'll let you. Let's see if this will find something for you. Yeah, let me see what we got here. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. This was better. All right. So let me see what we got here. All right. I'm going to show this to you so you can see that this is not anything that is especially mysterious or anything that hard to see. Okay? Take a look at this. Okay? That is right there. That is a launch control facility. Right there, that building. Okay? This right here is the actual missile silo. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Yeah. Okay, so that's the missile silo. And there are a lot of things in this that you can discern. This right here is a helipad. These are scattered all over northern America. I'll have a better picture for you coming up a little bit later on. In other words, these missile silos are not a mystery. We know exactly where the Chinese missile silos are. As a matter of fact, if I can, I will do my best to give you a look at some of their missile silos. We have all this information, and it's in open source. It's Google Earth Pro. Okay, and I look at it all the time. Yeah, exactly. And people are saying, "My goodness gracious, talk about a lot of money being spent." Yeah, there's a huge amount of money on these nuclear missiles. So I wasn't really concerned that it was floating over the United States. I wasn't concerned, and I said so. This is not something that I'm concerned about. It did blow up into a political mess because the United States didn't shoot it down. There was no reason to allow this thing to fly over that we know of, but it brings up all kinds of very serious problems. So apparently, we'd been watching this thing for 5 days and we didn't do anything about it. Where did the balloon come from? Well, it apparently showed up over the Aleutian Islands, then Canada. Then it was spotted over Montana on Wednesday by a commercial flight. Officials will not give size specifics, but when you go from the top to the bottom, where the actual balloon was, down to the instrument payload, it's about 3 school buses, about 120 feet. Okay. So, what's going on with the instrument package? Nobody knows. It was not known whether the balloon was being guided. It seemed to sort of hover over some very interesting sites up in the upper Midwest. It was not known whether it was being guided. Over 5 days, it drifted across the U.S. on a southwesterly coast to the course to the Carolinas. It was shot down 6 nautical miles after the coast, or off the coast of South Carolina at an altitude of just over 12 miles, landed in water 47 feet deep. No injuries or damages. But like I said, this is kind of a mess here. And what we need to do is we need to figure out just exactly why we have this mess here. All I can tell you is there's a whole bunch of stories going on, and I'm going to get to all of it. It's a very involved story. It is a mess. It is ridiculous. It is stupid. It is all the things that American politics can bring to you about something this silly. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Yes, no YouTube. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. But let's talk a little bit more about this mess that we have here. Okay. The mess that we have is that we have this morphing story of just exactly what is happening with regards to this Chinese spy balloon. Okay. So the spy balloon has now been shot down. All right. It's shot down off the coast. Why was it shot down off the coast? I think I have a pretty good reason. Okay. The remains, this is also from Fox News. Here is where all these pieces of this particular vehicle are going to go. The remains of the Chinese spy flight shot down over the U.S. over the Atlantic Ocean this past weekend are headed towards an FBI processing lab in Quantico, Virginia. This, according to senior U.S. government officials. The balloon remnants are set to be analyzed in the coming days. Possible Chinese spy balloon debris was spotted on the coast of South Carolina. Police are asking area residents to report other possible sightings. The news comes as China admitted that a second balloon spotted over Latin America is theirs, alleging the craft is civilian in nature. There are no civilian anythings in China. There are no civilian projects of any kind. It's a totalitarian society. It's called a totalitarian society because the society itself is run by the government. The entire thing. The government owns everything. There is no civilian anything. I don't even know why they keep trying to put that out there. It shifted off course because of weather, its limited self-steering capability, blah, 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 blah. With regard to the balloon over Latin America, it's been verified that the unmanned airship is from China, of civilian nature, and used for flight test. Once again, in China, if you're doing flight testing, the government is doing flight testing. There is no civilian anything there. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So that's basically the same thing. Republicans on Capitol Hill demanded a closer look at the decision-making throughout last week, which saw the Chinese spy balloon cross the entire continental United States before being shot down. Now, please understand that I'm not especially concerned about any of that from a standpoint of reality, from a standpoint of exposure of national security issues. They have spy satellites that are at least as good as that balloon. And so I don't know exactly why they even bothered with it in any way, shape, or form. Just shoot the thing down. Just shoot it down. Don't let it into the airspace. Or let it into the airspace because it's not really going to find that much. But then you got to ask why. And this is where the political mess starts to show up and rear its ugly head. So we know for a fact, oops, let me do this. We know for a fact, hold it, stop what you're doing. There. We know for a fact that President Biden and his family have had lucrative business deals with China. That's a fact. We know that China is a totalitarian society. Everything that happens in China is a government project. There are no civilian anythings. Therefore, the Biden administration, members of the Biden family, President Biden himself, apparently have been doing direct business with the Chinese government. And so what ended up happening is that maybe somebody has to ask this question, whether there's any reality to it or not. Did President Biden allow this balloon to fly across the United States, or did the United States government allow the overflight based on some kind of a deal that we have with China? Something resembling the open skies proposal by President Eisenhower back in the late 50s. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of real garbage in this. We'll explore some of it here in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So just in case you're still exercised by just exactly what kind of intelligence this particular balloon overflight could possibly have created, I want to show you something. Okay? Yeah, this is fascinating to me, and I hope it's fascinating to you too. See that right there? Let me zoom in just a little bit here. Let me see if I can show you a little bit more about this. This is a circumstance whereby what you're seeing there are Chinese missile silos, probably under construction. Okay. And the thing about them is that you'll see the various names. Suspected missile silo field, that's just one silo. Remember, that's 55 meters, that's 75 meters, et cetera, et cetera. And these are the coordinates. Okay. By the way, these pictures were taken in 2021 between May and July. And I don't know whether you've noticed this or not, but those are pretty good pictures. You can see all construction debris around all of these things, various installations, etc. You know, you can see all this stuff. But what's fascinating is that was taken from a United States satellite. Okay, now remember, we're talking 75 meters here, 55 meters. Those are very small objects. And you can see even smaller objects right beside them. That's about a 1 meter resolution picture. That's about what you can find when it comes to the civilian world and satellite imagery. Still pretty good. So the thing that I'm trying to tell you is that, okay, so the hue and cry over what possible military applications this particular balloon could have seen, probably minimal. But the political damage is not minimal. The question you have to ask is, okay, so President Biden and his family have deals with China. All right, so is this overflight being allowed over the United States, is that indeed part of that deal? There was also something else that came up, and that was, as soon as this story broke, someone at the Pentagon, and I reported this last Friday, someone at the Pentagon said, well, this happened during the Trump administration. Excuse me? A whole bunch of Trump officials immediately said, no. Richard Grinnell said, no, that never happened. And then what ended up happening is that this same Pentagon guy sat there and said, let's see, Chinese, here we go. Information suggesting the Chinese spy balloons traveled over the continental United States during the Trump administration was discovered after former President Donald Trump left office. This according to a senior Biden administration official. Excuse me? A defense official said that Chinese spy balloons briefly traveled over the United States at least 3 times during the Trump administration. President Trump, a number of his national security and defense officials refuted the claim, telling Fox News that never happened. Then on Sunday, a senior administration official for the Biden administration told Fox News that U.S. intelligence, not the Biden administration, assesses that the PRC surveillance balloon transited the continental U.S. briefly 3 times during the prior administration, and once that we know of at the beginning of this administration, the Biden administration, but never for this duration of time. The official told Fox News this information was discovered after the Trump administration left. The official then said they went undetected. Not true, not possible at all. So they were indeed detected. But we have Trump administration officials saying that never, ever happened. Yet we have someone from the Pentagon, unnamed, saying it actually did. So what does this mean, John David? General Mark Milley, during a very tense moment in the Trump administration is reported to have called his Chinese counterpart and said, "We are not going to attack you." That's treason. We also have reports that during the Trump administration, there were a couple of generals that started out as cabinet officials that agreed not to be out of town at the same time so that they could interfere with Donald Trump in case he decided to do something crazy. Someone has to point out that it seems very strange that an overflight from a Chinese surveillance balloon could occur during the Trump administration with nobody, including the director of national intelligence, and two of them, in fact, without them knowing about it, unless the Pentagon did not report it to those officials. If the Pentagon did not report it to those two officials, then what's the Pentagon for? The President of the United States, whether you agree with him or not, whether you have anything to do with him, whatever. The simple case of the matter is the President is the commander-in-chief of the United States military. By withholding that information, that is grounds for a general court-martial and your removal from the United States military. That's withholding information from the commander-in-chief. You don't do that. What that is that separates the military from civilian control of the military, and that is bad. So if indeed there were transits of Chinese intelligence balloons flying across the United States during the Trump administration, and the Trump administration didn't do it, people need to go to prison. And I don't say that lightly, because a lot of those guys are, shall we say, in the military in high government posts. That is that. Let's see. How do you know that it did not happen? No one trusts a word from Trump and his staff. No credible. Okay, well, the reason that you could have this circumstance, I just explained it. You can have this circumstance if the Pentagon doesn't do its job and inform civilian control of the military. We already know that America's intelligence agencies and America's Department of Justice and America's federal law enforcement agencies were all conspiring to try to remove Donald Trump from office. That, by the way, is called a coup, a real one. Not a bunch of people dressed in buffalo heads going to the Capitol trying to interfere with the proceedings. No, this was an actual coup. And it was turned aside because they suddenly realized what they were doing. They wanted to disenfranchise everybody that voted for Donald Trump. Everybody in 2016 and remove him from office. So the only way that the Trump administration would not have known that Chinese balloons transited the United States is if that information was withheld. And if that's the case, then the deep state is a lot deeper and a lot uglier. And those people that, for whatever reason, believe the deep state's just fine as long as the Republicans are being either left out of the loop or being compromised in some way, or Republicans are the beneficiary of lying to the FISA court or any of that kind of stuff, you stick around. This kind of garbage gets to take hold in the United States, your people will be flushed down the toilet too. This is awful. Let's get back to some of the decisions. We don't know these agencies conspired against Trump. Yes, we do. Remember the conversation between Rod Rosenstein, James Comey, James Clapper, all those guys getting together and saying, Rod Rosenstein saying, hey, I can wear a wire in, try to get him to say something compromising, and we can take him out with the 25th Amendment. That's conspiracy. Yeah, we know that's true. Yes, we do know those agencies conspired against President Trump. That's the news. I know. I reported it. I couldn't believe it when I was reporting it. It's still there. And the fact that the FBI, for example, lied to the FISA court in order to keep these wiretaps going, that information didn't stop with the FBI. That ended up in the Oval Office during the Obama administration. This is a mess. And no amount of spin or, hey, we don't know this stuff. The Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes defense doesn't work. I know nothing. I saw nothing. Baloney. It doesn't give me any pleasure to be able to report this on the air. It doesn't give me any pleasure. As a matter of fact, it makes me kind of sick to my stomach, but that's where we are now. Somebody better tell you it's me. Let's talk about something else. They didn't want to shoot this thing down over Montana. Why? Well, because it might fall on people, et cetera, et cetera. There are two reasons why you don't shoot it down. Thing number one, it's powered by a nuclear power generator. They're essentially, it's plutonium, I believe, 239. And what you do is you enclose it in some blocks of material that reflect the alpha particles coming off of the plutonium. And what it does is, by the virtue of how much you reflect back toward it, that's how hot it gets. You can use the heat to run a generator and run power. They didn't want to shoot it down because somebody might go over there and say, wow, this is a plutonium core power generating device. We use them all the time. They're built very, very strongly, by the way. So in case there's like a blow up of a satellite on launch or something like this, they survive. They just go out and get them again and they brush them off and put them back in another satellite. The Chinese have them too because they stole the technology from us. Let's move forward. That's one reason. So this balloon, apparently powered by a nuclear device floating over the United States, that's one reason. The other reason is they don't want anybody getting a close look at it. So they waited until it was over the ocean, where they could cordon off where the balloon crashed. You can't get into that space. As a matter of fact, you couldn't get into any airspace around that balloon, so nobody could take their Learjet up and take a look at it. Why? Why all this secrecy? And so what they did was they waited until it was off the coast. They shot it down in water so nobody could see it. That's why. Once again, why all the secrecy? What's the problem? What's going on? By the way, we don't know those agencies conspired against Trump. Individuals within the agencies, maybe. The director of the FBI, the deputy director of the FBI, actually a few deputy directors of the FBI. We've seen it over and over and over again. These agencies conspired against President Trump. CIA, John Brennan. The Office of National Intelligence, James Clapper. This is all documented. That you don't believe it is your problem. But all of these things keep coming up. All these things keep coming up. Everybody said, my God, President Biden is weak. He's allowing one of these balloons to float across the nation. Well, how do we fix that damage control? Well, it's real simple. What we do is we just say, well, it happened during the Trump administration too. Oops. It's like a clumsy liar. There's only two reasons why the Trump administration wouldn't know anything about it. One, it didn't happen. Two, it happened and the Pentagon didn't report it to their superiors. That's all there is. You see, this analysis is irrefutable. All you got to do is use your brain. All you got to do is think. So why are things the way they are? I'm not saying that all of this is real, okay? But I'm saying, okay, if it's not real, come up with a better explanation. I'm right here. 817-379-2172. Rings right there. I can put you right on the phone and we can talk it over. How about that? Or you can get on the chat room on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, and I can hardly wait. Yeah, someone says, I wonder if the Joint Chiefs of Staff checked in with China first. I imagine there were conversations between the military and the United States military, the military of China, and the United States military. Somebody said, what the heck are you doing? And they said, well, that and such and so. Keep it a secret. Oh, okay. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So I got a few things going here for you that I want you to see. And this is kind of cool. All right. So it's a little old, but you'll be able to see it here. And let me show you this. Okay. Pay very close attention to your screen. That right there is a United States Minuteman missile silo. Let me see if I can bring this down just a little bit. No, I can't. Okay. So anyway, what you see right here, that is the door that's over the missile right there. And what happens is that this is not a control facility. Remember that building I showed you, which is out there in the open? Well, this is a remote silo. This is the actual silo door that covers the missile. And what happens is that it slides out of the way and the missile comes right out. Nobody's here. There's no one below the missile. There are missile cabs, but they are not in a situation where they really matter. But take a look at what we got here. Let me get rid of this. Nope, that's not what I want to do. I want to get rid of that. There we go. And here is an actual launch from a Minuteman silo. You see the door is already moved back, and that is the launch. Okay, that's the launch. I have seen one of these myself when I was in Las Vegas, Nevada. They launched one from Vandenberg Air Force Base. Okay, so that's and there it is. So they launched one. I probably saw that particular launch, but it was something that you could not possibly miss. So anyway, like I said, this information is out there. Everybody knows where these silos are. I showed you 3 Chinese silos. So what do we have? Well, we have a whole lot of real incompetent damage control over this over this balloon. We have people casting aspersions on the Biden administration, and clumsily they said, well, this happened during the Trump administration. The people of the Trump administration said, no, it didn't happen at the Trump administration. And the only way that could be true is if these people saw fit not to report these incursions in American airspace. That's also treason. That's gross insubordination. That is something that would get people thrown out of the United States military so fast it wouldn't even get close. I mean, it's an open and shut case. And that's where this may end up going, unless it all gets swept under the rug, because these mistakes are so huge. It's like the real coup that took place against President Trump. It's so huge, you really kind of sort of have to sweep it under the rug. And how do you do that? Well, you say that a peaceful protest, had the Black Lives Matter people shown up to try to stop the Electoral College confirmation in the House of Representatives, it would have just been a peaceful protest. Nobody would have gotten arrested. But because Americans had seen in the summer of 2020 that this is the way you protest, then all those people made a huge mistake by going on the Capitol grounds. They should have stayed at the perimeter, waved their American flags, sung the national anthem, and gone home. Hopefully they listen to me the next time this happens, because something tells me there is going to be a next time. Republicans are tearing into President Biden after the Pentagon announced the discovery of a suspected Chinese surface balloon. How on earth is Beijing Biden allowing a CCP military balloon to fly freely over Montana? This according to Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona. The balloon's discovery, I can't read the next part because it's damaging, against the president. The balloon's discovery was announced days before Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was supposed to go to China. He canceled his trip. Senator Bill Hagerty, the Republican from Tennessee, called for a strong response from the Biden administration to China's provocation. Communist China hypocritically lectures the U.S. about respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. That's over Taiwan. If that's true, then that China is behind this loitering high-altitude provocation over our homeland, the Biden administration must respond strongly and decisively. They didn't. Why? These are answers you should be demanding from your representatives in the government of the United States. That's what you should be doing. This is awful. The story continues to be changed. And what's fascinating to me is that, man, there are all kinds of very interesting circumstances regarding trying to get some of these articles out of out of my normal, on this balloon. I'm having trouble getting these articles to pop up on the internet. You don't suppose? Nah. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Let's see. Wonder if the Joint Chiefs checked in with China. General Milley already admitted to doing something similar. U.S. citizens can't fly toy drones over populated areas because of dire safety issues. But a Chinese spy device weighing the same as 3 school buses, not quite actually. No imminent danger. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us. Hour number 2 is next. Fascinating, huh? Really fascinating. We'll be back with more in just a second. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you here. What do? We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, which is not the news. Just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. Share it. Let's debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. That is what we do on the Wells Report. So we've been keeping our eye on the academy, America's colleges and universities. And we've been doing that for reasons that are absolutely necessary. The necessity of doing that is that there are so many people that are in well over their heads in college loan debt that they may actually never be able to pay those loans off. And that's a combination of a lot of different things. First of all, colleges are ripping off people for their educations. That's thing number one. They're just a ripoff. There's no real way to create any kind of competitive atmosphere for colleges, except, of course, to have better education. And it takes a long time to be able to build up a reputation, say, for example, like Harvard, Columbia, Georgetown. There are a lot of these universities that have built their reputations for sending into the American workplace people that are ready to go and are brilliantly educated. It takes a long time to do that. And while another little problem with that is that really technology moves so fast in the United States, if you have some kind of a technical degree of some kind, then basically all you're doing is checking off a box. It really doesn't make any difference what kind of engineering degree you have, because in order to get a job anywhere beyond, say, for example, a university engineering department, you're going to have to start at square one with the technology they're teaching. You can't learn the technology that they are building and that they are developing in college. You just have to have some idea of what they're talking about. That's the way all this works. So an awful lot of people have spent an awful lot of money on these undergraduate courses. I mean, like 120 grand. And they're just not worth it. And they're finding out that it's just not worth it. A lot of that also has to do with the kind of degrees they are getting. Let me give you an example of a degree. It used to be sociology. Sociology was the vaporous, anatomy, psychology. It was just this kind of vaporous degree. You became a social worker. Oh, I see. And just exactly what's the story about social workers? Well, they're not exactly psychologists, so they can't be psychologists, and they're just basically people that help out in an unofficial way. Well, you don't make a lot of money doing things unofficially. I mean, you get a job at, say, for example, Child Protective Services, I suppose, or any number of these other agencies, but there are not a lot of those jobs, and they don't pay very well. But here's another one. Annie Fern Gonzalez. I believe that's her name. She's an undergraduate student at Bentley University near Boston. She switched her major 4 times before settling on a relatively new degree program. Her chosen course of study is one that's offered at few other institutions: Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI. The term has become contentious. Most recently, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis proposed removing DEI programs from the state's public universities on the grounds that they are ideological. But at its core, advocates say these programs are about helping different groups achieve representation, participation, and a sense of belonging. So Ms. Annie Fern says, I'm finally in a place now, especially with this major, where I'm establishing myself, just feeling comfortable in the spaces I enter. Bentley's DEI degree programs, a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Arts, were the country's first undergraduate level offerings of their kind amid mounting demand for DEI experts on everything from education to finance. A number of colleges with undergraduate and graduate DEI programs has been growing. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let's get back to just exactly what we're talking about here: diversity, equity, and inclusion. You get your undergrad degree. What do you do next? You send a resume, etc., maybe a copy of some of your papers to, say, for example, a prospective employee or employer, let's say a Fortune 500 company. And so, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to get a job somewhere in HR. And what you're going to do is you're going to use your degree to empower certain groups over other groups, depending on the political and the ability to, say, for example, practice what is probably discrimination either for a particular group against another particular group. You'll be able to navigate that and so on and so on. In other words, what you're doing is you're getting into a job to exploit divisions. I'm not real sure that there are a whole lot of Fortune 500 companies that need to have someone in their midst, in their, say, for example, director circle, that is exploiting division among the employees. What do you think? Do you think this any Fern person is going to be able to pay off her college loans? Let's see here. Let's see. Bentley University. Let's find out just exactly what the tuition is at Bentley University, shall we? Let's find out. Tuition, Tuition. I can spell good. Tuition, Bentley University. Okay. Let's see. Tuition and fees, $56,500. Room and board, $18,660. Books and supplies, approximately $1,340. Let's see. Personal expenses, an estimate $1,200. New student fee, $250. So you do a 4-year degree. That's we're not going to do the room and board thing, but we're talking somewhere in the vicinity of about, shall we say, $57,500. That's actually more than that. Let's just say $60,000. By the time you get out of Bentley University with a 4-year degree, you just spent $240,000. That is more than the house that I'm sitting in. That's more than my mortgage. And I live in a nice neighborhood with a really nice house. That's Bentley University. Is she going to be able to pay those loans? No, she's not going to be able to pay those loans. Absolutely not. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah, that's going to be a mess. I'm just asking. And then there's another story from the Academy that we got to talk about. Climate alarmism is robbing young Americans of their hopes and ambitions for the future. This is according to a geochemist and university professor, Dr. Matthew Wielicki. A University of Alabama earth sciences professor believes many STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, a lot of STEM professionals overstate climate change's immediate effects, like warning of imminent and unavoidable catastrophes. He says that kind of alarmism is screwing up students' mental health. Yeah. They're only giving one side of the story, Wielicki told Fox News. They're catastrophizing over exaggerating that side to make a point because they claim that the end justifies the means. I happen to think that scientific integrity is way more important. Wielicki believes political ideology infiltrating college classrooms, particularly Diversity, equity, and inclusion and climate alarmism has tarnished the teaching profession. He said young climate activists like Greta Thunberg aren't the problem. They're only believing what they've been told and spewing it. And because, like, for example, Greta Thunberg is a creation of the media in the first place, the media just loves her. Yep. I never blame the young people, said the professor. I blame the adults that are experts in the field that sit and zip their mouths because they don't want to rock the boat. Weilicke taught earth sciences at the University of Alabama for nearly 8 years, fulfilling a lifelong dream to follow in his father's footsteps as a college professor. Last month, he tweeted that he was resigning at the end of the semester because of the negative effects educators' political messaging was having on students. Quote, I loved science because it wasn't political, and now we're getting rid of that. Here's the tweet. Why I'm leaving the University of Alabama. Some internet sleuths have discovered that I will be leaving my faculty position in the Department of Geological Sciences after this semester. So I thought I should tell you why. And then he continued, let's see, wonder if I can get there from here. Can I get there from here? I don't know. Let me see. Oh yeah, here we go. As with most large, okay, as with most large decisions, the reasons are mainly personal. COVID made me realize that we were really far from our families in California, and the travel our parents, was taking a toll. The result was that our children were not seeing their grandparents very often. As a Polish immigrant, I know what that's like to live far from family. I started to resent myself for choosing my career over my family's time together. Furthermore, over the last decade or so, but especially in the last few years, the obsession with universities and grant funding institutions on immutable characteristics of faculty and students and the push for equity in science above all else has dramatically changed the profession of an academic professor. The rise of illiberalism in the name of DEI is the antithesis of the principles that universities were founded on. These are no longer places that embrace the freedoms of exchanging of ideas and will punish those that go against the narrative. Although I had worked from an early age to earn a PhD to become a professor like my father, I felt the profession is no longer worthy of my efforts. Contributing to this is the earth sciences community's silence on the false climate emergency narrative. Members of this community routinely discuss the mental health effects on climate catastrophism but dare not speak out lest they lose their positions and research funds. I will continue to objectively review the current state of the science as I provide my expert opinions through social media and a future podcast and book. I appreciate all the support that I've received from followers and members within the community who shall remain nameless. If you live in Colorado, get ready for the Weilicke whirlwind. Excited about this new chapter in my life. And then he got a whole bunch of support for it. So the academy is becoming an indoctrination place where children are buried in debt forever and hoping that the government will bail them out. And when the government bails them out, what is the government going to ask these people to do? Why, go to work for the EPA, of course. The creation of the self-licking ice cream cone, courtesy of the American University Academy movement. Yeah, this is not the country that we are. This is the country that they hope to make. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. I lived in New Orleans for almost 4 years. We made radio history. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I learned exactly what it means to miss New Orleans. The things I learned stick with me to this day in that city. When times are hard, I often fall back on the things that I was able to learn in New Orleans. That you can eat really, really well on not so many bucks. As a matter of fact, you can take the idea of incredibly cheap food and make it insanely delicious. And that's kind of like a microcosm of that amazing city. There's huge riches, there's desperate poverty. There's political corruption. There's people joking about political corruption. New Orleans has had a really tough time because COVID-19 really screwed it up. And it's going to be a while before New Orleans comes back. Especially since it's been named the murder capital of the United States. Why am I bringing all this up? Well, because Lent is coming. A season of penitence. Fasting. Giving up things to focus you on the coming miracle of the resurrection. Lent is something that we observe here in the Wells household. More appropriately, I suppose, the Grzinski-Wells household. Because I was Episcopalian and we knew what Lent was and we dealt with Lent, and a few observed the penitence that Lent demands. But it wasn't nearly as big as cradle Catholics growing up in Pennsylvania. In the Polish community, let me tell you something. That's a religion. Oh, well, actually, Catholicism is a religion, but they really make a religion out of that religion. And so we make a religion out of that religion too. What's interesting is that it starts on Ash Wednesday. And we Catholics will be going for ashes on our foreheads. You'll see mine. Although I've missed some years. It's always driven me crazy. But that's Ash Wednesday. What do you do on Fat Tuesday? Mardi Tuesday. Gras. Fat. It's actually Tuesday Fat, but, well, that's the French thing, so it's Fat Tuesday. What you do is you eat and eat and eat, and you drink and drink and drink, and you have a lot of fun, and you celebrate the upcoming season of fasting. And it's called Mardi Gras. It's a wonderful party. There are parades in New Orleans. There are parades that are epic. Just amazing. And they happen at various times of the day. And they literally tell you how successful a Mardi Gras is based on the amount of garbage that they take off the street. The smell of chicory coffee and various other aromas coming together in that unique New Orleans smell. All I can tell you is that what are they going to do this year now that Mardi Gras is taking place in the murder capital of the United States? Well, it's going to be those lean times that they sing about and laugh about, and they parade around and make a big deal out of poverty and have fun with it as much as they possibly can, but there's this underlying sadness. And that's New Orleans. This is the Wells Report. Stick around. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. I know what you're thinking. What did he just do? Well, I have hypoglycemia, which means that when my blood sugar starts to crash, I have to eat something. I just had a Cliff Bar, and I was doing something getting ready for the next part of the broadcast, and I forgot that I was on camera when I cleaned out some of the stuff in my mouth. So just try not to throw up. And if you do, make the trash can, okay? You can do it if you try. I practiced. So there is a thing that I've been talking about here the last few years regarding regulatory agencies substituting their regulations that they come up with based on politics of the day and try to enforce them as law. There is only one place where you can find lawmaking capability, and that is the Congress of the United States. Executive branch agencies can have regulations, but they cannot enforce them unless they are law. There's this weird little thing that Congress did that needs to be abolished forthwith that says that these agencies can act in, shall we say, absence of actual law and actually can operate under the auspices of the Congress. And that needs to be immediately stopped. And it will be things like what's going on here in Texas that will stop them. Reported by Fox News, Texas has become the latest state. As a matter of fact, it happened today, threatening to sue the Biden administration over a conservation rule that could harm landowners, farmers, and energy producers across 5 states. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office filed a notice of intent with the Department of the Interior and the Fish and Wildlife Service over a recent regulation protecting the lesser prairie chicken. Lesser prairie chicken. That's a species the rule lists as threatened in some parts of Texas and endangered in other regions in the state. The Attorney General alleged the regulation violates federal law, fails to consider the state's conservation measures, and would prove to be onerous for state property owners. He is correct. Again. Paxton said in a statement, "I will not tolerate the Biden administration's efforts to run roughshod over the property rights of Texans and to stop our conservation efforts aimed at protecting Texas wildlife." He goes on to say, quote, "This rule was a targeted attempt to implement an unlawful, top-down federal approach aimed at advancing a radical environmentalist agenda, which would crush the type of economic development that aids in providing funds for conservation. This is not going to fly in Texas." According to a release from the Attorney General Paxton's office, the Endangered Species Act requires the Fish and Wildlife Service to take a series of steps, including conducting an impact study and considering a wide range of variables before classifying a species as threatened or endangered. Such federal requirements were never taken before listing the lesser prairie chicken, according to Paxton. The rule also threatens considerable conservation efforts that stakeholders led by Texas, private landowners, and private groups have already put in place to protect this particular species of chicken. Combining this disregard for federal law, the overly vague nature of the rule, and the failure to abide by the legally required notice of proposed rulemaking, the new rule constitutes yet another example of the Biden administration's willingness to prioritize executive overreach over state-directed management and conservation of wildlife and natural resources. Last week, Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach similarly announced that he would sue the Biden administration over the rule, saying it was illegal. It would have a devastating impact on Kansas ranchers, Kansas oil producers, and Kansas wind farms. In November, the Fish and Wildlife Service, a DOI, Department of Interior sub-agency tasked with managing the nation's wildlife populations and habitats, announced it would list the lesser prairie chicken after a, quote, rigorous review of the best available scientific and commercial information, unquote. They went on to say, quote, the lesser prairie chicken's decline is a sign our native grasslands and prairies are in peril. These habitats support a diversity of wildlife, are valued for water quality, climate resistance, grazing, hunting, and recreation, said Fish and Wildlife Service Southwest Regional Director Amy Luders said at the time. The listing sparked concerns among lawmakers, farmers, energy developers. The listing, which effectively locks up millions of acres across 5 states to protect this chicken, could negatively impact business. The Texas-based Permian Basin Petroleum Association previously won a lawsuit against the FWS during the Obama administration, arguing that a rule protecting the chicken didn't properly factor in local conservation efforts. Tens of millions of dollars have been spent in recent years to protect the species, the group's president said at the time. The Biden administration has chosen to continue their assault on Texas energy and agriculture producers by classifying the lesser prairie chicken as an endangered species. This decision will wreak havoc on our local and state economies, make it even harder to produce oil and gas in the midst of an energy and economic crisis, said Representative August Pfluger, the Republican from Texas, a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. President Biden needs to get out of the business of overregulation and focus on unleashing America's energy dominance. The federal government must do so in a balanced manner through ongoing local and state conservation efforts. We can protect important species without devastating our local and rural economies. In response to pressure from industry groups, state officials, and lawmakers like Pfluger, the FWS, the Fish and Wildlife Service, delayed implementation of the rule from late January to March 27th of 2023. The agency explained the delay was to avoid confusion and disruption for landowners, federal partners, and the industry. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has delayed the rule to list the lesser prairie chicken as an endangered species, giving our farmers more time to prepare and be recognized for their conservation efforts, said Representative Ronnie Jackson, Republican from Texas, a member of the House Agriculture Committee. He said that on January 26th. If this rule is passed, the Texas agriculture community would be devastated, hurting an industry that has already been scrutinized by President Biden's radical green agenda. This victory is a direct result of relentless efforts from Republicans to defend the livelihoods of our farmers. We will continue to stand strong, fighting first for the well-being of our country against a power-hungry regime. So far, the Fish and Wildlife Service has not said anything about this. You need to remember a few things. There are places, there are birds like the prairie chicken. They're kind of cool, actually. They're delicious. They, by the way, in case you don't know, taste like chicken. Okay? Yeah, they taste like chicken. And because they are chicken, they're smaller than a regular chicken, and they're a lot harder to find. You can't go down to the store, even Central Market, and get some lesser prairie chicken. You can't do that. You have to shoot them. And by the way, part of the plan from the Fish and Wildlife Service is to shoot these chickens that are apparently endangered. This is essentially just exactly what Ken Paxton says it is. This is an opportunity to try to put lesser prairie chickens in front of people making a living. And this has happened before. This has happened before. It is absolutely infamous. The snail darter. D-A-R-T-E-R. The snail darter. Yes, the snail darter. The controversy was amazing. The snail darter was related to the discovery in 1973 as the snail darter was deemed to be an endangered species. That occurred during the construction of the Tellico Dam on the Little Tennessee River. The dam project had been authorized and begun before passage of the protective environmental legislation. On August 12th of 1973, the University of Tennessee biology and professor David Etnier discovered the snail darter in the Little Tennessee River while doing research related to a lawsuit of the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. The lawsuit said the Tellico Reservoir, to be created by the Tellico Dam, would alter the habitat of the river to the point of killing the endangered snail darter. They never found out whether this was true or not, but the possibility, according to a guy to a little fish, kind of an attractive little fish, that's probably, I don't know, 4 times bigger than a paperclip, stopped this entire project. The NEPA lawsuit slowed the construction of the Tellico Dam. It actually did not stop it. I'm sorry. The Supreme Court upheld the protection under NEPA. Congress passed legislation specifically exempting the snail darter from protection. The dam project and inundation of the reservoir were completed in 1979. And you know what? I bet you there are plenty of little snail darters out there having a great time in their big new digs. Let's see. The spotted owl. Spotted owl. This is one of my favorites. The spotted owl. Sweet little bird. I mean, a sweet little bird. Okay? It really is. It really is a sweet little bird. But you got to understand something. The northern spotted owl is responsible for destroying the Oregon timber and paper industry. Yeah, people used to be able to make a fortune by harvesting lumber and making paper. And then somebody finally said, my God, the northern spotted owl they're territorial and intolerant of habitat disturbance. They do not migrate. They may shift their ranges in response to seasonal changes like heavy snow. Research suggests the owls are well adapted to fires, using recently burned areas to forage for rodents and remain in their territories if enough tree canopy covers the remains. Yeah, so what they did is they decided that the northern spotted owl was absolutely essential, so much so that it was more important than people living in Oregon making a living. And so they destroyed the paper and timber industry in Oregon. And it still hasn't come back. It's really fascinating. You can see this. It's the dark-eyed northern spotted owl, according to this propaganda from ABC Birds, is an indicator species for old-growth forests, meaning scientists study the bird to get a larger picture of the health and ecosystem it shares with species like the marbled murrelet, Swainson's thrush, the western tanager, and the evening grosbeak. This owl is one of 3 spotted owl subspecies, along with the Californian Mexican, and is listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. So people can't make a living because we have to protect the bird. The bird, by the way, in case you're wondering, is genetically indistinct from the southern spotted owl. As a matter of fact, it's the same flipping bird. Exactly. And they got so many of them in Mexico, they use them as bait. I'm telling you, this is a stupid game. And this kind of stuff is only available to try to make things so expensive for people to try to do things like, I don't know, build a pond on their own property. They do that so that people will just essentially prioritize what is a small little ugly creek that could end up being a property enhancing pond if somebody would just let them excavate around a particular dam site, put a dam up there, and just let that pond just grow and wonderful and everything would be fantastic. No. Because it changes the wetlands. Excuse me, the pond would actually add to the wetlands, but it's not there already, so therefore it cannot be created. That's the kind of ignoramity that we deal with out of EPA and all of these Fish and Wildlife Services and so on and so forth. They honestly believe that these animals, birds, in some cases fungi, are more important than people. They are not. Yeah, Randy says pretty soon they're going to be putting wild hogs on the endangered species list. No, they keep having too many wild hogs. Yeah, they keep having wild hogs. Wild hogs, yeah, it's open season. In case you don't know that, by the way, Texas, you can shoot a wild hog anytime you see one. As a matter of fact, they really wish you would. I know I wish you would. I shot one once and was very, very pleased with my marksmanship and also my ability to field dress the hog, even though I made a mistake. I'm not good at it, but I need to be better at it. And someday I will be, because I think that people ought to know how to hunt. This is the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Stay put. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. What we want to do here is we want to take a couple of minutes and do some reporting on what is a serious disaster. The death toll has now surged to 3,400 people after a powerful pre-dawn earthquake that affected both Syria and Turkey, right there on the Turkish-Syrian border. The U.S. Geological Survey said the magnitude 7.8 quake struck at 4:17 a.m. local time in the southern Turkish province of Kahramanmaraş. It's Kahramanmaras. Kahramanmaras. There it is. Kahramanmaras. Just took me a couple of minutes. 20 miles from the city of Gaziantep. Scores of aftershocks followed. Hours later, a 7.5 magnitude quake struck more than 60 miles away. Turkish authorities say that more than 2,300 people have died. In Syria, the government reports 656 people are dead. And organizations in the opposition-held areas that are not under government control have estimated another 450. Turkish President Erdogan said at least 11,000 people are injured. He declared 7 days of national mourning. An untold number of people were believed trapped under the rubble of thousands of collapsed buildings, and the injury and death toll was expected to rise as rescue workers dug through the wreckage. Thousands of survivors are left homeless. It's cold there. It's the Northern Hemisphere. They're dealing with winter. There are stories of rescues as first responders and volunteers, some with detection dogs, picked through the rubble. The Turkish Defense Ministry released a video of a mother and her 2-year-old child being extricated safely from rubble, in the city of Gaziantep. Hurry up, please, because my daughter is passing out, the woman says as rescuers work feverishly to save them. The young girl is rescued first. Responders assure the woman that your child has been rescued. She is alive. A few minutes later, the woman is brought to safety. British Premier League soccer team Newcastle United FC tweeted that it was praying for positive news on the fate of former teammate Christian Atsu, who is reportedly among those trapped under the rubble in the Turkish city of Kahramanmaraş. I tried. Atsu is a Ghana native. He signed with the Turkish team Hatayspor. Ukrainian Foreign Affairs Minister Dmytro Kuleba said the country stands ready to send a large group of rescue workers to Turkey to assist crisis response. Erdogan called the quake the country's biggest disaster since the 1939 Erzincan earthquake that killed more than 30,000 people. The region sits on top of a major fault line, and about 18,000 were killed in earthquakes that hit northwest Turkey in 1999. Workers are still sawing away at slabs, pulling out bodies in the darkness of Monday night. It's later there. As desperate families wait for news of their loved ones, in the Turkish city of Adana, Imran Bahur begged workers to find her daughters and her family in the rubble of a destroyed apartment building. My grandson is a year and a half old. Please help them, please. We can't hear them or get any news from them since morning. Please, they were on the 12th floor. The United Nations General Assembly President, Saba Karosi, extended deep sympathy and heartfelt condolences to the people of both countries. He asked diplomats to stand and observe a moment of silence in memory of those who are lost. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the UN was counting on the international community to help those caught up in the disaster, many of whom were already in dire need of humanitarian aid in areas where access is a challenge. Specialist UN surge teams from the Office of UN Disaster Assessment and Coordination tweeted they were ready to deploy. Emergency medical teams from the World Health Organization have been sent to provide essential care for injured and the most vulnerable. This according to WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. I'm trying. Erdogan's advisor Ilnur Sevic said that resources were not a problem hampering the rescue efforts. You are working against time, he told the BBC. The adverse weather conditions and people that are under the rubble, you have to save them before the weather drops in and kills these people because of the cold. So people are now under the rubble. There's a mad rush to get them out. Sevic said that searchers are using radar and body sensors to find survivors. But there's so much widespread devastation you can't reach everywhere. Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay said no structural risk remains after all the dams in the region were inspected following the quake. Israel said that it would send search and rescue medical teams to Turkey and Syria. Syria does not recognize Israel. but the two countries have remained at war, at least technically, since Israel was established in 1948. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had requests and ordered aid airlifts to both countries. This is what we do around the world. This is what we do in areas close to us, said Netanyahu. China also offered aid to Syria. Beijing is ready to provide urgent humanitarian assistance to Syria according to needs. And so far, we are waiting for the United States response. Haven't heard anything, but I'm sure there will be something in the offing. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for being with us today. We are giving you the news, analysis, commentary, and debate. It's what we do. Back with more in just a moment. Thanks for joining us. Okie dokie. And now hour number 3 is right around the corner. So hang out at the corner, okay? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. What do we do on the Wells Report? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, which is not news, it's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. So by all means, please share yours and let's debate, shall we? Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. And you can also join us on the chat room. I'm looking down here at Arthur Davenport. Arthur Davenport and I went to high school together. I was for some reason reminded of my high school mascot. Barstow High School on the high desert of Western America, the Mojave to be perfectly exact, had the only mascot of its kind. It was unique in all of America, all the high schools that you can think of. There was only one high school mascot that was a Riffian. Yeah, which is a tribe of Middle Eastern nomads, and the desert was a perfect place for the Barstow High School Riffians, and he and I are Riffians. So that being said, he and I also raced cars. We both had Mustangs. He is also somebody that's very involved in wildlife and so on. He asked me this question: do you think people should be able to snuff out unique life forms in pursuit of economic gain? Do you think it's ethical and moral to push a unique life form to extinction in the pursuit of money? Okay. Well, did I say Gilbert? Excuse me? I did say Arthur, didn't I? What? Anyway, so here's that's a very good question. You know, there are all kinds, Riffians. 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 Look it up. It's actually in a cartoon, in case you're wondering. Okay, so back to work. Is it something that should happen that people should, in pursuit of money, snuff out a life form in the pursuit of economic gain? The answer is as follows. I believe, according to the Bible, I believe that human beings have primacy on this planet over all of the animals. God gave them all to us. Now, should we be responsible stewards of these animals? Yes. Should we put the needs of those animals, like the lesser prairie chicken, in front of people feeding other people? No. No, we shouldn't. And yeah, I suppose what you can do is you can say that a farmer grows his crops in order to make money. But that farmer also grows his crops to feed his neighbors. You can say, okay, should we snuff out unique life forms in pursuit of economic gain in a vacuum? No. But if economic gain comes from feeding people delicious food and plenty of it, and if it does impinge on the habitat of the lesser prairie chicken, that is basically a cause celeb for people that really don't have a lot going on when it comes to actually knowing anything about that chicken. I mean, the guy that's talking about the lesser prairie chicken and trying to be the prime mover behind all of this doesn't even live in Texas. I don't even know that he's ever seen a lesser prairie chicken. All he's done is he's gone through basic databases and said, hey, there are fewer lesser prairie chickens. The lesser prairie chicken gets lesser and lesser every year. We have to stop human development, human growth, humanity in general for the sake of these chickens? The answer is no. But I don't see it as purely economic. We have to choose. We have to make difficult choices. We have to make difficult choices. And by the way, You know, God gives these species an opportunity to adapt or die. It's not just them, it's us too. Adapt or die. God, Mother Nature, a very, very harsh dictator of reality. If you're not able to keep yourself from becoming extinct, then you don't deserve to not be extinct. Perhaps the food can be produced in another way, an area with less impact. It's not an either or situation. Well, let me tell you about the San Joaquin Valley. The San Joaquin Valley was nourished with water from the California aqueduct. And because of spectacularly political water management in the western areas of America, including Lake Mead, Lake Powell, which are now shadows of their former selves, even though record snowfall in Colorado and so on happens every single year. Where does that water go? Well, it's basically just an opportunity to keep the San Joaquin Valley from growing produce, which they used to do in abundance. Now they don't do that so much anymore. And all those families that used to grow produce are growing something else, or they move away, leaving the San Joaquin Valley a mess. You don't have to go far to see it, Arthur. It's just right up the road. Go to Stockton. Species evolve slowly. No, but they can react quickly. We know for a fact that animals can figure stuff out. We know for a fact they can. There is, in this neighborhood, a pack of coyotes. We can hear them talking to each other from time to time. I once called the police department and said, "Can I shoot one of these coyotes in our neighborhood?" And he goes, "No, you can't. There are too many houses close by." And I go, "Yeah, I know. I'd look for the background, but I won't do it." And he goes, "Just try to scare them off." Right. Exactly. We can't hold up human beings. We can't hold up human beings waiting for species to evolve around figuring out how to live near buildings. And by the way, I think these animals are a lot smarter than we think. I think they can figure it out. Remember, the curveballs that humanity throws at nature is nothing in comparison to what nature throws at these various species. Species were going extinct long before we showed up. Species will continue going extinct. Like, for example, everybody is all worried about the giant pandas. Why are the giant pandas in a situation where they are an endangered species? I'll tell you why. They only eat one thing: bamboo. They only eat one thing. On this planet, in order to be successful, you have to be omnivores. In other words, you have to eat meat, and you have to eat vegetables, and you have to eat a wide variety of food to keep you alive. Pandas eat bamboo. That's it. Same story with koalas. They eat eucalyptus leaves. That's what they eat. That's it. No eucalyptus, no koalas. But the thing about koalas, they're really kind of cute, and they're really kind of cuddly, and they're really warm and beautiful, and they have really good smelling breath. It's really weird. Let's see. So a group of species that live in a particular plant community cannot pick another type of habitat. We're not talking about plants. We're not talking about plants. And if I have a chance to either grow, say, for example, iceberg lettuce, and people are going, "My God, he eats iceberg lettuce. What the hell is this person doing? He eats iceberg lettuce." He should have mixed field grains. Because iceberg lettuce has absolutely no nutritional value. Right. And I eat iceberg lettuce to keep my weight down. And having no nutritional value with something that tastes really, really good and has a really great texture, that's perfect, isn't it? Mixed field grains, Mike. Okay. Anyway, Let's see what else. Chris Grimes has shown up. It's also equally important what is being grown. For example, growing alfalfa specifically to feed livestock is a massive misuse of water, especially when it's being done by Saudi Arabia in Arizona. Well, yeah, I understand, but the massive misuse of water that's really a problem in Arizona is whoever's responsible for allowing all the water from the Colorado River to go into the Rio Grande and disappear. Those reservoirs should be filled to the very brim. That's why they're there. It's water mismanagement. It's not a drought. It's a calculated sabotage of water for Las Vegas, Phoenix, Southern California, and yeah, the San Joaquin Valley. It's really wild. California has something called the what is that? What is that source of water? Oh yeah, the Pacific Ocean. And they don't have a single desalination plant in California. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It's equally important what's being grown, whatever. Okay, I hope we can use our intellect to make better choices. Look, I got to be honest with you, right? We have made better choices. Human beings have done really, really well. For example, we used to kill whales so we could use the oil for lamps. Okay? We moved beyond that. And the whales are doing fine. They are doing fine, especially blue whales. My all-time favorite whale. Beautiful whale. Huge. They're okay now. That's good. But yeah, we do make better choices. And don't get me wrong, I think that being responsible stewards of animal life is a godly thing. I think it's wonderful. But I also have to say something else here. If I got my choice between one of these lesser species and human beings, I'm going to pick human beings every time. Every time. Let's see. We can also talk about plants. A plant adapted to sandy soils cannot live on clay soil, so if we plow their habitat, we simply can't move to another soil type. Sucks to be that plant, huh? Adapt or die. California has senior water rights to the Colorado River over both Arizona and Nevada. The other two lower basin Colorado River states. True. Absolutely. That's true. But not even California can get enough water. Why is that? There's no reason for it. Absolutely none except political. And that's one of the ugly stories that hasn't been told. What's amazing is when people think they have answers with little background knowledge. What are you talking about there, Arthur? What are you talking about? What I'm talking about is very simple and very straightforward. Mother Nature dictates terms. All of us live under those terms. We can temporarily suspend them. We can do things that are, shall we say, work around the problems that nature gives us. But nature will always win. Yeah, well, Arthur, you're not listening. He says he's talking about me not knowing what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. You're just not willing to listen. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So we've been talking a little bit about the animals. We've been talking about nature. We've been talking about the human being, the human response and required responsibility and stewardship of lesser species. One of the things that I have always found to be amazing is that there is a great religion that believes that all the animals are, shall we say, more sacred than people. And all I can tell you is that one of those churches has the word environmentalist in it. You know, I've listened to people talk about the biggest problem on this planet is people. This would be a great planet if only people weren't here. And I can't understand the insane pathology of that thinking. You know, it's truly amazing. I asked Arthur, who is, like I said, a naturalist of some sort. I said, so here's my question. He was questioning my background to be able to speak on this because he's speaking about something that I'm not speaking about, and he's not listening to what I'm saying. He said, he said, it's sad that you think you have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I have some. And I asked this question: which is more important, human beings or lesser species? And he thought about that for a good long time. He said this: hey, if I'm starving, I'm going to eat whatever I can get my hands on. The issue at hand is whether the economic gain sought by a developer or farmer or rancher trumps the continued existence of a unique species. And once again, I pointed out earlier in this conversation that there are other reasons besides economic to be a farmer. Farmers feed us. Do they make money? Yeah. Do they make as much money as they should? No. No. But farmers feed us. Everybody's worried about, now wait a minute, if we take one of these lesser animals out of the food chain, it can have disastrous effects to the food chain. Yeah? You think? Well, what happens if we take farmers out? What effect does that have on the food chain? Well, it has a huge effect on the food chain that involves human beings. So once again, setting aside human beings for the sake of the lesser prairie chicken? I'm sorry. I have an absolute wonderful cure for the problems of the lesser prairie chicken. Okay? Cajun fried chicken. I'm just saying. If a species has a unique function in the ecosystem, loss can prompt cascading effects throughout the food chain, a trophic cascade impacting other species in the ecosystem itself. Right. But you don't have any problem whatsoever keeping farmers from growing food. That ecosystem involves human beings. There's a flaw in your logic, is there not? And that's what I'm discussing. I'm not discussing philosophy. I'm not sitting there saying, my God, these people are going to make enough money to send their kids to college. Therefore, we have to take care of the lesser prairie chicken and keep these farmers out of work. No, we don't. God gave us the lesser prairie chicken. If the lesser prairie chicken can figure out a way to live in harmony with farmers, they'll be fine. But I don't believe that human beings ought to work their butts off and starve themselves trying to work with the lesser prairie chicken. Call me a human being. Yeah, it's not about economic gain. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Hi. Tomorrow night. And by the way, I don't know what the schedule of the Wells Report is going to be tomorrow. I got some things I got to do. There you go. So stay tuned. Go to Facebook, which, by the way, many people are doing. Go to Facebook, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to keep your eye on that to find out the status of tomorrow's broadcast. Okay? So there you go. By the way, tomorrow night, and I might be covering this speech live tomorrow night. So tomorrow night, the President of the United States will stand before a joint session of Congress and deliver what's called the State of the Union speech. It's the State of the Union address. And people are writing all over everywhere about it. CNBC covers it this way. If President Biden's recent speeches are any indications, the president will likely celebrate his handling of the economy in his State of the Union address. Citing decades-low unemployment, slowing inflation rates, and robust GDP growth, the full picture is more complicated. The U.S. economy is in an overall delicate state. Several key indicators, such as unemployment, a near 54-year low, and GDP show signs of robust growth, but inflation is still at a 4-decade high. That's 40 years. And the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 8 times in pursuit of an elusive soft landing to avert recession. It's not so hard to stop inflation. It's really hard for the synergistic effects of the process of slowing the economy down to hit that exactly right so that you don't have a crater instead of a soft landing. That's really hard. Friday's job report showed the lowest unemployment rate since May of 1969 at 3.4%, below the 3.6% predicted by economists. Biden shared the numbers in a speech saying 12 million jobs have been created since he took office, the strongest 2 years of job growth in history by a long shot. Put simply, I would argue that the Biden economic plan is working. For the past 2 years, we've heard a chorus of critics write off my economic plan, said the president. Today's data makes it crystal clear. What I've always known in my gut, these critics and cynics are wrong. Those job numbers, however, don't take into account the rebound in jobs at U.S. companies that were hiring after downsizing and laying off scores of employees during the pandemic. That's something that isn't talked about. Further, some 9.6 million people have left the job force. They are not counted in the unemployment rate. In other words, these numbers are flim-flammed. And they don't need to. They don't need to flim-flam the numbers. Just tell the truth. But for some reason, the truth is the very last priority in Washington, D.C. And so it is a rebound situation. The pandemic cost a lot of people their jobs. Are there more jobs now than before the pandemic? Probably, but not that many more. In other words, the economy is recovering. And oh, by the way, there are people, I'm not one of them. I mean, I'll bring this up just as a point of discussion, but I'll bring this up and say that, look, recovery is different than job growth. The president, if you really want to think about it, actually threw a very serious obstacle in the way of more job growth by destroying energy production in the United States and then lying about it. The simple case of the matter is that when you're paying twice as much for gasoline than you were, say, for example, 2 years ago, that's going to have a serious effect on your budget. And listening to somebody say, well, just buy an electric car. That's not a solution. That's not a solution. It's cynical, in fact. It's cynical and it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Green technology isn't ready yet. It's not anywhere close to ready yet. And destroying the technology that works in favor of one that is pie in the sky and not going anywhere, you're not even working on the right things to make a green economy work. And I keep saying superconductors, room temperature superconductors, we got to figure that out. Hello. Transmitting electricity is the biggest drain on the amount of electricity that we use every year. And if you really want to do electrical stuff, then you're going to have a better source than windmills and solar panels. Hello. Anyway, so all I can tell you is that there's a way to say, yeah, the president he has not mangled the recovery, but he tried. He tried to mangle the recovery. He did. And now the Fed is trying to get a control on inflation caused by $1.9 trillion worth of spending, and they didn't learn their lesson, so they spent another $1.7 trillion. They're trying to do that, and they're trying to do that by essentially crashing the economy. Slowly, in a measured way, but that's what they're doing. Let's hope that those incredibly gifted bankers of the Fed know what they're doing this time instead of what they did in 1929, which was crash the entire freaking economy. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Cross your fingers. So anyway, the president is going to talk about all that stuff. He is going to, according to USA Today, deal with a divided Congress, an unexpected or expected upcoming re-election announcement, the twin forces that will shape the president's speech. Delivering the second State of the Union of his presidency, President Biden will amplify the message that Democrats and Republicans can work together, as long as Republicans do what Democrats want. But facing dim prospects for more major legislative wins, a looming slowdown over the federal budget, and a GOP House investigating his administration and family, President Biden will tout his successes and lay out what more he wants to do if given the chance. To me, it sort of sets the stage for what I think is going to be a consequential battle this year between Joe Biden and House Republicans, said Robert Gibbs, who was President Barack Obama's press secretary. Biden devoted the first 11 minutes of last year's hour-long address into supporting Ukraine, a rallying cry delivered just days after the Russian invasion. The war will probably figure prominently this year as well. President Biden will be speaking in the run-up to a one-year anniversary, and while Russia did not have the swift success that many anticipated a year ago, the longer the fighting continues, the harder it will be for President Biden to maintain support for Ukraine at home and abroad. NPR says President Biden has to do these few things in his speech. Okay? Presidents of both parties have used the annual speech to spell out their agenda and express indirectly how that agenda differs from the opposition. The State of the Union address at their very best is an eloquent laundry list, but they're also political speeches, says Michael Walden. It's a very political season, and people are already running for president. I'm sure you're going to hear a contrast between Democrats and Republicans play out on the screen at this speech. And so what they need to do is they need to figure out a way, President Biden, in my view, to pivot. That's what NPR is saying. They evoke Bill Clinton, who was able to pivot and say that the age of big government is over. Now, there's a guy named Rex Hupke, for whatever reason, during the State of the Union address tomorrow night, Rex says that President Joe Biden should announce that U.S. scientists have found a cure for cancer within hours. Fox News pundits would be saying, great, now patriotic cancer doctors will lose their careers to Biden's relentless political ambitions. Yeah, well, okay, Rex Hupke is a cynic. And what he says is that what he should do, according to Rex Hupke, is go full woke. I don't think that would be a good idea. And then there's this, which I think is really quite amazing, and this is the reason why we're talking about this. This comes from the Washington Post, okay? It comes from the deputy opinion editor and columnist David von Drebel. Listen to this. If you don't go to the Washington Post, and I understand why you wouldn't, but I do because I have to. At this time of year, through good times and bad, the White House hums with activity worthy of a Santa's workshop. Pray, what project keeps them so busy? Safer communities, smoother roads, healthier citizens, a more peaceful world? No. The early weeks of nearly every year are consumed by a frenzied effort to create another in a long line of dreary, tedious speeches known as the State of the Union Address. Washington insiders in love with lingo say SOTU, S-O-T-U, State of the Union. The SOTU is an object lesson in the frailty of humans. Even the most brilliant, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the Founding Fathers had the vision to create, as young men, the world's most durable constitutional republic. Yet, they could not see the awful spectacle that opportunistic politicians would make of what they intended to be an item of routine business. Article 2, Section 3, Clause 1, the Constitution requires the President to, from time to time, give to the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. For more than a century, presidents dispatched the obligation by sending written reports. Talk about the details of government operations. On rare occasions, something quotable would slip in, most memorably when Abraham Lincoln closed his 1862 message to Congress with an appeal to end slavery. Quote, "In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free. Honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve, we shall notably save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth." Unquote. Woodrow Wilson, arguably the most consequential and bad presidents in history, applied Jim Crow to the federal government, for example, ruined the quiet exercise in 1913, realizing the occasional report to Congress could be turned into a political spectacle, a display of presidential grandeur, rather than an exercise in subservience to Article 1 of the Constitution. Wilson traveled to the Capitol to lecture lawmakers. Things have gone... I love this column. So good. Things have gone downhill ever since. Calvin Coolidge, called Silent Cal but not silent enough, gave the first State of the Union on radio in 1923. Harry S. Truman trotted the vehicle onto TV in 1947. Lyndon B. Johnson decided he deserved prime time, climbed the Speaker's rostrum in 1965 to demand that Congress sit, roll over, and heal. Ronald Reagan, the former actor, decided in 1982 that a leading man needed a supporting cast, and he began quickly exhausting the tradition of salting the room with ordinary people to exemplify his wisdom. Somewhere in there, members of Congress began abasing themselves by leaping to their feet to applaud every few sentences, or if they were in the opposition party, staring stonily as chairs rounded from the other side. It's stupid. Richard M. Nixon may have been a crook, but at least he kept his State of the Unions short, averaging 35 minutes and 20 seconds. Bill Clinton in 1995 gassed on for an hour and a half. The average Clinton speech was nearly an hour and a quarter, the annual National Root Canal, but not as long as the average speech by Donald Trump, who closed only after an hour and 20 minutes of squinting at the teleprompters as if we were reading a foreign language. You can't say stuff like that, man, when you got Joe Biden and his work with teleprompters. Okay, you can't say stuff like that, but I get it. Even at such Wagnerian length, presidents rarely find time to examine the actual condition of the United States. They're too busy reporting on the excellence of their judgment, the purity of their intentions, and the wisdom of the American people in placing such a paragon in the Oval Office. If you want a rough hangover, take a swig of the hard stuff every time President Biden shares another one of his successes. Ending the pandemic, quashing inflation, lowering gas prices, outsmarting China, healing our brokenness, coaching the Eagles, thinking of buffalo wings, engineering an Amtrak train. The braggadocio will include a few change-ups in which he forces the opposition to join the applause as further proof of his presidential authority. Usually done with saluting the troops, but a hero firefighter or a sick child can do the trick. Cynically. When was the last time you heard, "Gosh, that sure was a good State of the Union address"? Never. Television viewers have tuned out by the tens of millions. Hackneyed, misleading, self-serving, dull. The annual addresses should be put out of its misery in hours. White House staffers toil so furiously because they believe the ritual is a boost to presidential ratings. Yeah, I don't think so. So here's what I'm thinking. You know, there was this hassle about the State of the Union address. Nancy Pelosi was being a snot to President Trump and so on and so forth. And I said, Mr. President, you should actually go someplace else besides Congress and give the State of the Union speech. Seriously, you ought to use AT&T Stadium, for example. Open the doors, let everybody in. 110,000 people listening to the State of the Union address. It's a hell of a lot more important to us than it is to Congress, especially after Nancy Pelosi, just as the most despicable thing I ever saw, tore up President Trump's State of the Union speech after it was over. I'd never do a State of the Union speech in front of that Congress again. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. It was exquisitely painful to see a president of the United States abused as badly as Donald Trump was. It was bad for the country. It damaged the political process in this nation. It split the people. 74 million Americans hate the Congress. And it is something that has been created as opposed to something that is intrinsic. Americans get along with each other really, really well, whether we agree politically or not. But when you start calling people domestic terrorists, When you start calling people bigots when they're not, when you start doing horrible, awful things, when you start doing all those things, people get angry and they start throwing bombs back, especially when these charges are absolutely feckless. And so when President Trump became the president and threatened the very existence of the incredible political machine that we found out not only includes the Democrat Party, but also the Socialist Party of the United States, euphemistically called progressives, the mainstream media from one end of it to the other, America's federal intelligence agencies and federal law enforcement agencies, the IRS, the Federal Election Commission, all of these executive branch agencies being used as instruments of politics instead of instruments of service. When we saw all of that in its hideous and grotesque detail, I realized that we had elected the right guy. I had no idea the depth of the treachery that we would see regarding the Trump presidency. It's so bad, people are beginning to actually notice and actually say so in public. But the damage is done. The die is cast. And in order to keep it from happening again, we have to go through it again. The Republicans are going to start investigations into President Joe Biden and his family. Long overdue. I knew that there was a huge problem with the Biden family when President Obama called Joe Biden in to his office and said, "Joe, knock it off regarding Hunter Biden." They had that conversation. It was in the news. I reported it. I knew that there was a problem. I knew that when federal laws were set aside, the actual enforcement of important federal laws were set aside for the sake of politics and the people behind those politics. I realized that this was getting worse. When those same people that set aside law enforcement for politics then decided to start using law enforcement for politics and started lying to the court, lying to the president. And oh, by the way, we found out probably yesterday that there were deep state actors in the Trump administration that did not report Chinese balloons flying over the United States to the president of the United States, which violates the entire concept of civilian control of the military because protection of the airspace is a United States military show. So either those balloons didn't fly or President Trump wasn't told about them. And why would they not tell President Trump about them? Because President Trump would have stomped China into the dirt for it. That's why. So just exactly how deep into the deep state is China? As we found, the deep state is a hell of a lot deeper than we thought, just in general terms having to do with America. I'm beginning to wonder that maybe the Chinese Communist Party has a much deeper influence in the deep state than any American would tolerate. We'll see, but I tend to be exactly correct on that stuff. And so, Republicans, based on what is obvious, are very likely going to damage this presidency and perhaps end it. But that's just one thing. There are other things. They've got to do something about the FBI. They've got to do something about the Department of Energy, or excuse me, the Department of Justice. They have to do something about the CIA being willing to interfere in American politics, along with the NSA, along with the IRS, along with all of these executive branch agencies, the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of National Intelligence. Will anything come of these investigations? Probably not. But we're going to go through the national pain of them anyway, so that the next time one particular party decides to destroy a presidency, they'll think twice, because destruction of their own president is right around the corner. This has been the Wells Report. See you tomorrow. Thanks very much for joining us. By the way, don't forget, go to Facebook. I've got a busy day tomorrow. I don't know exactly when the Wells Report's going to be on. Very likely we will probably cover the State of the Union tomorrow live. So keep that in mind, okay? But that being said, stick with Facebook. I'll let you know, okay? God bless all y'all. Hey, Art, do you have my telephone number? Arthur, do you have my telephone number? Would you do me a favor? I can't get to those links on Restream. Have you got my email? Have you got something like that? Send me all of those things, especially the reading assignment you wanted me to read. Okay, I want to hear about this. Let's see, replying to the Wells Report. FWS, frequently asked questions. Okay, yeah, I want to hear all that. I want to read all that stuff. I pay attention to you, whether you agree or not. But you do miss what I'm saying. You're arguing one point. I'm arguing something completely different. So do me a favor. If you don't have, let's see, wait a minute. Let me see if I have your Contact Informazioni. I think I do, actually. Let's see. Davenport. Daven. Shoot, I don't. All right, Arthur, you got to reach out to me somehow. I'll try to figure out a way to send you a direct message or something. Okay, because I got to get your phone number. You got to have mine. All right, peace, love, joy. God bless you. And don't forget, the schedule's up in the air tomorrow. All right, but I'll probably be able to cover the State of the Union address. God bless. Take